Deep thinkers often struggle with these 7 things. In 1999, 2 psychologists at the University of British Columbia drew a line through the middle of what everyone had been calling overthinking. They found 2 different kinds of minds doing the same thing. One of them is what most men your age have been carrying for decades. And it's not the one you've been told it is. Tonight, 7 things deep thinkers struggle with, and the research that says you've been measured by the wrong yardstick your whole life. Here's what they found. 2 motivational engines can drive the same surface behavior. The Trapnell and Campbell paper called them rumination and reflection. Rumination is threat-driven. It's the loop. You go over what went wrong, what you missed. It feeds on its own anxiety. It rarely ends. Reflection is curiosity-driven. It looks identical from the outside. You're sitting at the table, staring into the middle distance for an hour. Underneath, the engine is different. The mind is exploring, not defending. Same room, different windows. And here's what most men your age never get told. The 1,999 research showed that most people being called overthinkers are actually running the second engine, not the first. You've been carrying a reflection mind your whole life, and you've been graded as if it were a rumination one. Take that in for a second. Most men your age have lived inside that misreading for 30, 40 years. The world calling reflection a flaw. The world rewarding the absence of it. Here's the second piece. This one is harder to admit. In 2014, 2 researchers, Grossmann and Kross, ran a study with 693 participants. They gave each person the same problem twice, once framed as someone else's, once framed as their own. The wise advice came out completely different. When the problem belonged to a friend, participants reasoned clearly. They saw what they didn't know. They considered other perspectives. They held room for change. When the same problem belonged to themselves, the wisdom collapsed. They named it Solomon's Paradox, after the king famous for advising others brilliantly and ruining his own household. You watch your friend's marriage from a clear window. You watch your own from inside the fog. The same mind that diagnoses everyone else's situation in 30 seconds can spend 3 years inside its own. So let me say this plainly. For decades, men your age have been told you overthink. The 1,999 research says they were halfway right. About the wrong half. Most of what you've called a problem is the reflection mind doing exactly what it's built to do. 7 things you've been carrying quietly. Tonight, what each one is, and what each one has bought you. They didn't measure you wrong because anyone meant harm. They just didn't have a yardstick for what you actually are. Thing 1. Replaying conversations long after they end. You drove home from dinner 3 nights ago. Today, walking the dog. You're back at the table. One specific moment. Not because you're anxious. The moment had data in it nobody else collected. That's not rumination. That's reflection finishing its work. Thing 2. Saying less than what you actually think. You had the full sentence formed. Then, in the half second before speaking, you measured the room. And you served half. Not because you're shy. Most rooms can't carry the full statement. You've spent 30 years learning which ones can. That's not shrinking. That's bandwidth calibration. Thing 3. Solving everyone else's problems while your own spiral. A friend calls at 10 on a Tuesday with a real crisis. You see the answer in 90 seconds. Your own decision, the one you've carried for 2 months, still looks like fog. We'll come back to this. It has a name. Let me tell you about a man I worked alongside for 2 years. I'll call him Howard, 58. Structural engineer in the Pacific Northwest. 31 years designing for the earthquake that hasn't come yet. Retired last spring. Now restores antique pocket watches in his garage on weekends. At his retirement dinner, 3 former colleagues told the same story. That Howard always overthought the load calculations. That he slowed every project by a week. Then one of them said it. You know, every bridge Howard signed off is still standing. The room got quiet. Howard nodded once. Finished his coffee. Drove home. He didn't argue. He already knew. 31 years had proved it. Some details have been changed for privacy. Howard is drawn from patterns I've watched in many men over the years, men who carry the weight of structures other people can't see and never explain it. The cost of Howard's reflection was 1,000 slow weeks. The reward was bridges that hold. If you've made it to Howard, you're the kind of man I make these for. The kind who sits with the slow weeks because you've learned what they're for. Subscribe, there's more like this every week. Now, 4 more things to name. Thing 4. Feeling distant from the people you love. You're at the kitchen table with the people who matter most. You're fully present. You're also fully separate. The room talks about Saturday. You're tracking the same room from a quieter altitude. That's not failure of love. Research on cognitive labor in households shows partners carry invisible work in different domains and often miscount each other's load as nothing. Your wife may be tracking 4 ongoing fires in her head right now. You're tracking 4 ongoing questions. Both invisible, both real. Neither cancels the love. It just makes the table quieter than it looks. Thing 5. Being unable to just relax. Third day of vacation. The view is the view. Your mind is still solving. Not because you're broken. Adam Ghazali at UCSF has spent more than a decade documenting cognitive control as a trained capacity. You can't untrain that on a Tuesday in Maui. The trained mind doesn't stop because the calendar says it should. Stop. Right now, while we're talking, notice your jaw. Notice the back of your neck. Notice where your shoulders are sitting. Most of you carry the cost of seeing this much somewhere physical. It's been there for years. It doesn't go away because you've named it, but it softens a little when you stop pretending it isn't there. Breathe out longer than you breathe in. We'll keep going. Thing 6. Carrying weight nobody asked you to carry. Someone in the room is upset. Your first reflex isn't what's wrong with them. It's did I cause that, and can I fix it? 2 questions in 0.8 of a second. That's not pathology. That's an ethical reflex 30 years old. It's why every team you've been on quietly relied on you to read the temperature. And yes, I know. Ghazali calls the smartphone a foraging device that hijacks the same ancient circuit animals use to find food. You spent 40 years training attention. Then you let a glowing rectangle eat it for breakfast. Welcome to the club. There's another man I think about often. Russell, 61, primary care physician in rural Vermont, 40 years in family medicine. Last spring he saw a scan he didn't want to see. 3 weeks before the appointment, he already carried it. The patient, a 54-year-old man, sat down, watched Russell's face and said, "You already knew, didn't you?" Russell said, "I had a feeling. I'm sorry I had to be the one to tell you twice." That's what carrying the slow weight looks like. Not heroism, not pathology. A man who's seen too much to pretend he hasn't. Thing 7. Feeling alone in a room full of people. This is the one nobody talks about. The one most of you feel most often. You're in the room. You're seen. You're still alone. Here's why. This is what we promised back in Thing 3. The Solomon's Paradox, the researchers named in 2014. You can see clearly into the room around you. But you can't get the same clarity into yourself. So you sit at the dinner, watching everyone find each other. The one person you'd need to find yourself with is the only person you can't quite see. The room isn't the problem. The window into yourself is the cost. The man carrying that window is the same one everyone turns to when they can't find theirs. 3 tools tonight, all research-backed. Pick one, just one. Try it for a week. One quick caveat. None of this replaces clinical care. If what you're feeling is closer to depression than reflection, please talk to a licensed therapist. Tool 1. Self-distancing. When your own decision keeps looping, write it down as if it belonged to a friend. Use third person. Howard is trying to decide whether to take the consulting offer. Grossmann's research shows this single move dissolves the Solomon's paradox asymmetry. Your wise reasoning capacity returns when you stop being inside the fog. Tool 2. 20-minute offload. The night mind isn't anxiety. It's reflection that didn't finish its shift. 20 minutes of paper and pen, no laptop, no phone before bed. Write what your mind is still solving. You're not journaling. You're clocking out. Tool 3. Phone protocol. Charge the phone in another room. Ghazali's data shows the device trains the foraging circuit to stay hungry. The cost of carrying 7 things is too high to also feed the rectangle. Pick one room. Phone doesn't enter it after 8 p.m. Here's what I wanted you to leave with tonight. For most of your life, you've been told there's something off about how your mind works. That the replaying, the slow weeks, the distance you feel at your own kitchen table, that those are problems. They aren't. The 1,999 research drew the line. The 2014 research named the paradox. The neuroscience documented the trained capacity underneath. You're not the rumination they warned you about. You're the reflection most rooms can't carry. 7 things, each one quietly earned. In the comments, type the number 1 through 7 that landed hardest. Just the number. I read every one. Honestly, that's where I learned the most. If you've made it this far and any of it felt true, Subscribe. There's more like this every week. On the screen now, the first video that started this thread for me, and another 7-thing piece that goes deeper into what comes after the pain. Pick whichever speaks to you.